This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. You know, I've been thinking a lot about the Cleveland Browns as an organization and how far they've come from what they were maybe 5-6 years ago, where they can go, and just how volatile and unstable all of that progress is. And it never feels more true. Like the growth and the volatility and unstableness of maintaining that growth, it never feels more real than after the Browns lose a football game. Because when you win a game, hey, look, things going well, we feeling good, no negative thoughts. But when you lose a game, all of the ugly sores that you're trying to build over, all the cracks in the pavement that you're trying to fill in, all of those blemishes come to the surface and show their faces, and it's not pretty, and it reminds you just how quickly things can go in the wrong direction and you could be right back where you started. Whether people want to accept this as the truth or not, and I think most people do, the Browns have made strides in the last 5 years as an organization. Like, they have made strides, big steps. They are seen much differently. They aren't the bottom of the division consistently. They have been a perennial, I wouldn't say contender, but they've been a perennial playoff contender to be in the playoffs. Pretty much every year since 2018, they've had a chance to make the wild card at the end of the season, or at least shake things up. They've played interesting seasons. They've been a relatively decent team. The records have not been great, but they've been a relatively decent team, even though the records haven't been as bad as they were in years past. They've made strides as an organization. They're keeping players for the longest time. And for those of you who are going to hear this kind of stuff and go, oh, well, big whoop that the Pittsburgh has done more or Baltimore has done more. Well, no shit. Right? Like, if you're talking about a franchise that's starting and trying to build a foundation, you can't compare them to things that are already finished, right? They're trying to build their foundation, and the foundation, the building blocks, are that. They're not finished pieces, right? And if you just like went 1 year, won a Super Bowl, and didn't do it next, like, that wouldn't be a foundation. That wouldn't be a template for long-term success, even though you get your short-term goals. My point is that what the Browns are trying to build here and what they're trying to maintain here is very difficult. It's not complete. And until it is complete, it's going to be fragile, right? Which means a couple bad blows in the wind can blow this whole thing down. That's why it's hard to build what Pittsburgh has, or hard to build what Baltimore has, or hard to build what various other Kansas City has. Like, all these teams that have built prominent, nice, good, solid organizations that have lasted year in, year out. It's very difficult to build that because it takes things going in your way. It takes stability, and it takes things to cement that stability, right? And we always see this after a loss, because the first thing I see in my comment section, even after a win sometimes, is fire Stefanski. People want to fire the coach. That might seem like a joke or something to not take seriously if you're just a fan, but that kind of stuff does build up, right? If the energy in the air becomes fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach, that trickles on up, gets into the locker room, gets into ownership, and then all of a sudden the coach is fired. This, what the Browns are trying to build, is very difficult to maintain. It is for everybody. It's the goal, but it's difficult, right? You need things to cement that success, or else it just becomes stuff, right? Tennessee's a good example of this. For a while, they were a good organization under, hell, even before they got Vrabel with Jeff Fisher, right? They had a stable coach for a long time, a good organization there in Tennessee, but they never won anything to cement that success. They never got that championship. And since they didn't get that championship, that stuff kind of blew away in the wind once they fired their head coach, Jeff Fisher. And then they hired Mike Vrabel. It started to get built back up, but we're seeing they never reached the point to where they needed to reach, and it's starting to blow away in the wind. The reality is that in order for the Browns to want to cement this success, so this is who the team is long term, that we follow the paths and the ways that this team has been doing that has led to more success, better players throughout the years. The way to maintain this is eventually to get something that can't be washed away. And that's a Super Bowl. That has to come. That has to be part of the process for this team in order to become what you want to become. Because the reason Baltimore is allowed to be Baltimore is because they won a championship in 2000, then won one in 2013, and that allowed them to be fairly stable as a franchise. Because when you win a championship, people stay for a very long time, and then you can get rid of them and replace them with people who are better eventually, but you're going to have stability, right? Same thing with winning the Super Bowl. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were not the greatest franchise in the world before the 1970s. They were not seen as anything special. They were just kind of the team that Cleveland beat up all the time. But then they hired Chuck Noll, and in Chuck Noll's 6th year and 7th year, they won back-to-back Super Bowls with the steel curtain defense, then came back around in 78 and 79 and basically became the team of the 70s, along with the Oakland Raiders. Were they Oakland Raiders? Yeah, they were the Oakland Raiders at that time, along with the Oakland Raiders. And that cemented Pittsburgh's success for a very long time. It doesn't guarantee it with anybody. Like, just because you win a Super Bowl doesn't mean you're going to have long-term success. But if you're building that stability and then you win a Super Bowl, that tends to be a winning formula. Bill Belichick did this. Tom Brady built that success. You have this stability. Keep these guys around a long time. You start to win more games. It's funny to me that, like, we don't get how important stability is for developing good football players and developing good football teams when we know this to be a true formula in stuff like college football, where you know a team's going to be pretty good if they have a ton of like third-year players, fourth-year players, you know, a lot of seniors, all of that. We see it every year where a school tries to cobble together all of these transfer players and it doesn't ever work out to be a national championship contending team. The teams that are able to compete for national championships are the teams that are not only able to recruit the best players out of high school, develop those players, give those players playing time, let those players develop and grow in their program, and have no fear of those players leaving to go anywhere else, at least the prominent ones, because they are where everybody wants to be. Those are the college football teams that are usually good. And they're good because they have experienced players at that level who've been playing around each other for a little while. And experience plus stability creates player development. It's usually how it goes. Somebody's got to be there to tell somebody to do something at a consistent level in order for it to happen. We know this to be true in college football, where development is probably the most crucial to your success, right? We have this patience with college football coaches. Like the rule is with the college football coach, you ain't going to know what he is until the 4th year because he needs to develop his own recruits. It takes that long. It's not that much different in the NFL. Different players, different quality of players, obviously, but it's not that different. You want to get good football, keep guys on the team for a while. Obviously, you want to keep good guys on the team for a while, like good players. Develop them, keep things stable. That will be a good team eventually. The recipe isn't complicated. But somehow when it comes to fandom, in the NFL, especially because I don't think people want to fire the coach as much in college, even though it happens a lot there too. I think it's just a sports thing. People just want to fire the coach when they're mad, more than it is like a logical thing. But we always get to this point where we want to fire a coach, and nobody asks whether that's going to be a good thing in the long term. Because you probably want to fire a coach because of a bad play call. You probably want to fire a coach because of a bad decision. He didn't call timeout when you wanted him to call timeout. He didn't go for it when you wanted him to go for it, right? Like, those are all things that get people riled up, angry, and make them want to fire a coach. But is that one bad decision worth throwing off years of development, years of stability, years of trying to build a program, years of putting things in one way so they happen one way? It doesn't seem like a worthwhile transaction to me. Because if a coach makes a bad decision, calls a timeout when they shouldn't have called a timeout, ultimately that can be fixed. If a coach calls a bad play call, the wrong time, hey, that can be fixed. While I think coaches are important for player development, while I think coaches are important for program stability, while I think coaches are important in that aspect, I do think that we overrate their impact on a game day basis. I think coaches play a role on game days, but they're not the determining factor. You don't win or lose a game often because of your coach. If you need proof of this, look at all these records that people gave credit to these coaches for. There are two that stand out to me. Ironically enough, they're two of the same records, just different teams. The reason it stands out to me is because it shows how much we hype up these coaches as far as like they're important to winning on game days. And we don't hype up the actual responsibilities they have that I think are actually more important for the growth of the team, which is the non-game day stuff. But we hype up the game day stuff so much that we miss the point. And this is the stat that always makes me realize this. How much have you heard about Bill Belichick or Mike Tomlin's incredible success versus backup and rookie quarterbacks, right? Whenever you have a rookie quarterback and you're playing Bill Belichick or Mike Tomlin, they're going to throw this over the head, right? Mike Tomlin hasn't lost to a rookie quarterback. He's 6-26 against rookie quarterbacks, and Bill Belichick doesn't lose to rookie quarterbacks. He's 5 and whatever against rookie quarterbacks, and he's 2 and whatever against backup quarterbacks all the time. And you see those stats, and if you don't think about it, and you just listen to how it's presented, which is Mike Tomlin record versus backup quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks, you go, damn, Mike Tomlin must be cooking up something crazy against rookie quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks. Or Bill Belichick must be cooking up something crazy versus backup quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks. I don't blame you if that's the interpretation that you get from it, because that's the interpretation that is intended for you. But actually think about what they're talking about. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you think Mike Tomlin has a great record versus rookie and backup quarterbacks? Why do you think Bill Belichick had a great record versus rookie and backup quarterbacks? Was it because of the defense? It's likely, right? Like, the defense probably had something to do with it. But also, what are the two things those coaches have in common? They had stability at the quarterback position. For the bulk of those wins versus rookie and backup quarterbacks, Bill Belichick had Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger. Well, not Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick had Tom Brady and Mike Tomlin had Ben Roethlisberger. Now, if I ask you, do you think it takes a genius defensive coordinator in order to beat a rookie quarterback when you have either Tom Brady or Ben Roethlisberger playing quarterback for you? You're not going to say yes. because that's not what the stat is about, right? The stat lies to you in how it's presented. It's made to be presented to you as a stat that's unobjectively good for Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin, and it shows their prowess as a coach and why they're important as a coach. But you peel that quarterback away, and all of a sudden, rookie quarterbacks can win against Bill Belichick. You peel that quarterback away, and all of a sudden, rookie quarterbacks can beat Mike Tomlin. Think Mike Tomlin's 4-5 versus rookie quarterbacks the last 2 years? Not 2 years or 3 years or what, recently, since Ben has fallen off a cliff, right? It's been that. Maybe those stats had more to do with the fact that Ben and Tom Brady gave Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick a quarterback advantage, which rounds it out to my point. The coaches are important. They need to develop the players. They need to take care of some important stuff on game day. But the people who make or break the games are the players. Bad coaches have been made to look like geniuses, Super Bowl champions by great players. Like Gary Kubiak won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning in an offense that was god-awful. Nobody thinks that Gary Kubiak's the reason they won that Super Bowl. But yet I'll hear this term, and this term just annoys me because I think it misunderstands exactly what you need to win a Super Bowl. Because I'll hear people say, yeah, Kevin's a good coach, but is he a Super Bowl winning coach? Is he a Super Bowl quality coach? And I'm sorry, that's not a thing. In my opinion, at least, it's not a thing. There's no such thing as a Super Bowl quality head coach. There's just good head coaches and bad ones. And you can get to a Super Bowl and win it with either. Dead serious. It's happened before. Like, you can win a Super Bowl with the bad. This is not a quarterback, right? We use that language for quarterbacks because quarterbacks are truly that important. A head coach, on game day at least, not that important. Maybe to develop that quarterback eventually, the stability that coach provides, the work environment, and the people that coach employs to put the developmental tools in place for the quarterback, yes, maybe he can have a hand in that, or she. But when it comes to winning a Super Bowl, do you think Mike McCarthy's some genius? Do you think Gary Kubiak was some genius in 2015? Doesn't take a genius to win a Super Bowl. Zach Taylor was like one play away from winning the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Does that make him a genius? We still don't think he's good. There's no such thing as a Super Bowl winning coach. There's just good ones and bad ones. And you need to recognize if you have a good one. And right now, the Browns have a good one. And I don't think a lot of people really want to fire the coach. I just think it's something that people say. But I do think it's interesting to have this conversation about where the Browns are as an organization, because on one hand, we can appreciate, I think most of us, that the Browns are in a much different place in 2023 than they were in 2017. They're a much different organization. They have a much different situation. Like, in a lot of ways, this is the Browns team this is the Browns situation I grew up dreaming that we'd have. A stable organization with players that we keep for years and develop into veteran players, and a machine that we keep churning out good players. It's no mistake that this year, a year where you've had the most stability that you have had since franchise reactivation, that you could lose Nick Chubb and get a Jerome Ford, that you can lose a Deshaun Watson and get a DTR, that you could lose a Jack Conklin and get a DeJuan Jones, that you can rotate 3 different defensive tackles out, that you can have JOK and Taki step up. There's a reason this team's able to go next man up as well as they've been able to go next man up all season. And that's because we spent a lot of time developing not just the top players on this roster, but the mid-level players and the back-end role players. And that's starting to show its growth. We are seeing the fruits of stability in Cleveland for the first time. since reactivation. We're seeing the fruits of that. But we also see how fragile all of this success is unless it's cemented with something real. And while a playoff appearance or a conference championship game, that would be great. And that would buy us some time. What cements you as a program is a Super Bowl victory. And we all know that this thing that the Browns have built that has been probably the best version of this team since reactivate, not even probably, obviously the best version of this team since reactivation. All of this work built on a house of cards until you win a championship. And I think that's why we get so nervous every week. I know I took you on a long way about it. I know it was a more philosophical video than maybe you were anticipating, but it is one that I think is interesting. Again, I'm not trying to judge anybody who is not a fan of Kevin Stefanski for whatever reason, or not a fan of Andrew Berry. I can understand why you would have your objections, but I also think at some point you have to accept that people who really want to keep Kevin here, it's a very valid opinion. Like, it's okay to have an opinion that is not popular or is not well accepted. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think we need those kind of opinions, but also you can't act like every other opinion is invalid, right? Like the Browns keeping Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, it's a very valid opinion. The fruits of stability, it's a very valid opinion. And I think that part of the reason why maybe I just get anxious thinking about it is all of this the Browns have built, all of this that I have seen what it was in other iterations of this Browns team. And I see what it is. And I'm like, man, this is so much better. We're on to something we could build with this. Like, this is our chance. I can see it. And I'm excited. But I also know if the wind blows and a couple bad pushes, it can all go to hell. Ain't gonna be nobody's fault. It's just gonna blow away. It happens all the time. So that's my thoughts on this and why it's important to keep that perspective about the Cleveland Browns right now, because we're in a very important place, but a very fragile place as a franchise. We're in a much better place than we've been, but since you're in a much better place than you've been, you got a lot more to lose. That's where we are as a franchise. We'll see what happens, but that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.